The emergency alarm screamed through the royal hangar as Princess Melody ran toward the ancient starship, with her silver robes flowing behind her like water. Her pointed ears caught every sound of panic from the guards and engineers who scrambled around the massive vessel. The celestial dawn had been sitting dormant in this hangar for over 300 years, and now suddenly it was needed desperately, and the enemy fleet was approaching Ethermore with enough firepower to destroy the entire planet. The Elf Kingdom had only hours before the attack began. Every other ship in the royal fleet was already deployed, but they would not be enough. The celestial dawn was their last hope, but nobody could make it work. Princess Melody had studied the ancient texts about this ship since she was a child. The armor that controlled it hung on a stand near the throne room. It was made from starlight metal that glowed with soft blue and white light. According to legend, only someone of royal blood could wear it and command the ship. She was ready to try. Commander Lisa Torres watched from the observation deck above the hangar. She had been on Ethermore for 5 years now, after her exploration pod crashed in the northern forests. The elves had rescued her and welcomed her into their society. She worked as a military advisor, now using her knowledge of human tactics and technology to help defend the kingdom. 2 dragons perched on her shoulders. The smaller one, named Spark, had scales that shimmered like liquid silver mixed with deep blue. The larger dragon, called Ember, glowed with colors of red and orange like a living flame. Lisa had found them as hatchlings in a cave shortly after arriving on this world. They had bonded with her immediately, and now they never left her side. She watched as Princess Melody approached the armor with determination on her elegant face. The princess was tall even for an elf, with long golden hair that seemed to catch light even in the dim hangar. Her eyes were the color of deep forests, and they held wisdom far beyond what any human could achieve. The attendants helped Melody into the armor piece by piece. First the leg guards, then the chest plate, and finally the helmet that covered most of her face. The metal seemed to mold itself to her body as if it were alive. Everyone in the hangar held their breath, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. The ship remained dark and silent. Its massive hull stretched over 200 meters long, with wings that could fold and unfold for different types of flight. Weapons ports lined its sides, and a crystal dome at the front served as the command center. But none of it activated. The celestial dawn refused to awaken. Princess Melody removed the helmet with frustration clear on her features. She had been so certain this would work. The ancient text said only royal blood could command the ship, but perhaps the texts were wrong. Perhaps something had been lost in translation over the centuries. The king himself arrived in the hangar, surrounded by his advisors. He was an imposing figure with hair like silver thread and robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. His expression was grave as he surveyed the inactive ship. Time was running out, and they had no other options. One by one, other members of the royal family tried the armor. Melody's brother, Prince Nathan, attempted it and failed. Her cousin, Lady Victoria, tried, and the ship remained silent. Even the king himself put on the armor, but still nothing happened. The celestial dawn would not respond to any of them. Lisa descended from the observation deck to get a closer look. Spark and Ember chirped softly as they sensed her curiosity. She had always been fascinated by ancient technology, and this ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. The metal of its hull seemed to shimmer with colors that did not exist in normal space. Symbols were carved along its surface in a language she did not recognize. As she approached the ship, something strange happened. The symbols began to glow faintly. It was so subtle that nobody else noticed at first, but Lisa saw it clearly. The dragons on her shoulders became excited, chittering to each other in their own language. Princess Melody noticed Lisa staring at the hull. She walked over with exhaustion evident in her movements. The princess had been awake for 2 days straight, preparing defenses and trying to find a solution to their problem. Now she looked defeated. Lisa reached out and touched the hull gently. The metal was warm beneath her fingers and seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The glowing symbols grew brighter. Spark launched from her shoulder and flew around the ship, breathing small bursts of blue flame. Ember followed, spreading crimson fire that did not burn anything but simply danced in the air. The king noticed the activity and approached with interest. His ancient eyes studied Lisa for a long moment. He had always known there was something special about the human who had crashed on their world. She had adapted to their society faster than anyone expected. She had learned their language in months when it should have taken years, and the dragons had chosen her, which was unheard of for someone not born on Ethermore. An idea formed in the king's mind. It was unprecedented and went against everything the texts said, but they were out of options. He gestured toward the armor that Princess Melody had just removed. His voice was deep and resonant as he spoke. He suggested that Lisa try wearing the armor. The advisors immediately protested, saying it was forbidden for a non-elf to wear such sacred artifacts. But the king silenced them with a single look. Desperate times required desperate measures. If the ship would not respond to royal elf blood, then perhaps it wanted something else entirely. Lisa hesitated, looking between the king and Princess Melody. The princess nodded encouragingly, despite her own disappointment. If a human could save their world, then so be it. Pride meant nothing in the face of extinction. The attendants helped Lisa remove her jacket and tactical gear. Spark and Ember perched on a nearby railing, watching with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand the importance of this moment. Lisa approached the armor, feeling both excited and terrified about what might happen next. The first piece of armor that touched Lisa's skin sent electricity racing through her entire body. It was not painful, but intensely alive. The metal wrapped around her leg and immediately began to adjust itself to fit her human proportions. The attendants gasped as they watched the ancient artifact transform before their eyes. Each piece they added created the same reaction. The chest plate molded to her torso and began to glow with soft white light. The arm guards shifted and reshaped themselves. The gauntlet sealed around her hands, and suddenly Lisa could feel things beyond the physical world. Energy flows and quantum patterns that should have been invisible became clear to her enhanced senses. Princess Melody watched with a mixture of emotions. Part of her felt disappointment that her own people's most sacred artifact would not respond to her. But another part felt hope rising like dawn after a long night. If this human could save them, then perhaps it was meant to be this way. The final piece was the helmet. As the attendants lifted it toward Lisa's head, Spark and Ember suddenly took flight. They circled the hangar 3 times, breathing streams of blue and red flame that intertwined like dancing ribbons. The dragons seemed to be performing some kind of ritual that only they understood. The helmet settled onto Lisa's head and locked into place with a sound like a bell being struck. For a moment, nothing happened. The entire hangar fell silent. Even the emergency alarm seemed to pause, as if reality itself was holding its breath. Then the world exploded with light. The celestial dawn came alive with a roar that shook the foundations of the royal palace. Every system activated simultaneously. The hull blazed with symbols that wrote themselves in languages older than any civilization in the galaxy. The crystal dome at the front of the ship glowed like a captured star. Power surged through circuits that had been dormant for centuries. Lisa staggered as information flooded directly into her mind. She could feel the ship's consciousness reaching out to her. It was not just a machine, but something far more complex. The celestial dawn had awareness and personality. It had been waiting for someone specific, and that someone was her. Through the neural link created by the armor, Lisa understood everything instantly. The ship had been built thousands of years ago by a race called the Architects. They had traveled the galaxy searching for species with potential. When they visited Earth long before humans developed spaceflight, they saw something unique. Humans possessed a quality the Architects valued above all others. It was not intelligence or strength or even creativity. It was the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The ability to look at impossible situations and simply keep fighting. Hope mixed with determination in a combination that could move mountains. The Architects designed the celestial dawn to respond only to a human wearing the armor. They left it with the elves, knowing that one day a human would arrive on Ethermore. The ship was a gift across time, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Lisa tried to process all this while also managing the overwhelming sensory input. She could feel every part of the ship as if it were her own body. The engines thrummed like a second heartbeat. The weapon systems hummed with ready power. The navigation computer showed her star maps of the entire galaxy, with routes she instinctively knew how to follow. The king approached her slowly, his ancient eyes wide with wonder. He had ruled for over 800 years and seen many impossible things, but this surpassed them all. The human standing before him, wrapped in glowing armor, looked like a warrior goddess from legends. Princess Melody stepped forward and placed her hand on Lisa's armored shoulder. The touch created sparks of light between them. Through the ship's systems, Lisa suddenly understood that Melody was meant to be part of this as well. The celestial dawn needed a human pilot, but it also needed an elf navigator. They were supposed to work together. Lisa spoke and her voice echoed through the hangar, amplified by the armor. She told them what the ship had revealed to her. About the architects and their purpose. About why only a human could activate the vessel. About the partnership required between human and elf to unlock the ship's full potential. The advisors murmured among themselves, uncertain how to react. Some felt insulted that their people needed a human to operate their own ancient technology. Others saw the wisdom in it. The architects had known something they did not. Perhaps there was a lesson to be learned about working together across species. The king silenced the debates with a gesture. There was no time for politics or wounded pride. The enemy fleet was still approaching and would reach Ethermore in less than 3 hours. They needed to act immediately. He made his decision and announced it to everyone present. Lisa Torres would become the official pilot of the Celestial Dawn. Princess Melody would serve as navigator and second in command. Together they would defend the kingdom and become the ship's true crew. The two dragons, Spark and Ember, would accompany them as guardians and companions. Melody accepted without hesitation. She understood that this was bigger than personal disappointment. The ship had chosen Lisa, but it also needed her. They would be partners in protecting their world. She extended her hand and Lisa grasped it firmly, creating another cascade of light where their armored and unarmored hands met. The ship responded to their agreement by opening its main entrance ramp. The interior glowed with welcoming light that seemed almost eager. Lisa and Melody walked up the ramp side by side with Spark and Ember flying overhead. As they entered the ship, the systems grew even brighter, recognizing its complete crew. The command center was beautiful beyond description. Curved walls of crystal showed views of space even though they were still inside the hangar. 2 chairs sat in the center, one clearly designed for the pilot and another for the navigator. Lisa sat in the pilot chair and immediately felt the ship merge fully with her consciousness. Melody took the navigator position and placed her hands on the crystal controls. Information flowed into her mind as well, though different from what Lisa experienced. She could see star charts and energy patterns. She understood flight paths and tactical positions. The ship was teaching her everything she needed to know. Outside in the hangar, the king and his advisors watched as the Celestial Dawn prepared for launch. The massive doors began to open, revealing the sky above. Enemy ships could be seen in the distance like dark spots against the stars. The Celestial Dawn lifted from the hangar with grace that defied its massive size. Lisa felt the ship respond to her thoughts as naturally as moving her own limbs. The engines produced no sound, but reality itself seemed to hum as they activated. Within seconds, they were soaring through the atmosphere of Ethermore, leaving the royal palace far below. Princess Melody's hands moved across the crystal controls with growing confidence. The ship was teaching her through direct neural feedback. She could see tactical displays showing the enemy fleet's position and composition. There were over 200 hostile vessels arranged in attack formation. Each one bristled with weapons designed to reduce planets to ash. Spark and Ember had found perches near the command chairs. The dragons seemed completely comfortable in the high-tech environment, as if they belonged there. Spark's blue scales reflected the light from the displays, creating patterns on the walls. Ember's red glow added warmth to the otherwise cool illumination of the command center. Lisa studied the enemy fleet through the ship's sensors. They were Krath warships built by a species that valued conquest above all else. The Krath had destroyed dozens of civilizations, and now they wanted Ethermore's resources. Their hulls were angular and brutal, looking like weapons themselves rather than vessels. Through the neural link, Lisa felt the Celestial Dawn's eagerness to fight. The ship had been built for this purpose, to protect and defend against overwhelming odds. Its weapon systems came online one by one, each more advanced than anything the Krath possessed. But Lisa knew that firepower alone would not be enough. They needed strategy. Melody provided exactly that. As navigator, she could see patterns in the enemy formation that Lisa missed. The Krath ships were arranged in a standard assault pattern, designed to overwhelm defenses through sheer numbers. But there were weak points, gaps in their coverage where a fast ship could penetrate and cause chaos. Lisa smiled as she understood Melody's thinking. They were not going to fight a defensive battle. They were going to attack. The Celestial Dawn was fast enough to slip through the enemy formation before they could react. Once inside, they could target command ships and disrupt coordination. She shared the plan with Melody, who agreed immediately. The princess's tactical mind, enhanced by the ship's systems, refined the strategy even further. They would make 3 passes through the enemy fleet, each one targeting critical vessels. The goal was not to destroy everything, but to create enough confusion that the craft would retreat. The celestial dawn accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible. Space itself seemed to bend around them as they approached the enemy fleet. The craft sensors detected them, but by the time they reacted, the ancient ship was already among them. Lisa wove through the enemy formation like a dancer. The ship responded to her instincts, moving in ways that defied conventional physics. Weapons fire from the craft vessels passed through empty space where they had been milliseconds before. The Celestial Dawn's shields deflected anything that came close. Melody targeted the first command ship, and Lisa unleashed a weapon that the architects had designed specifically for disabling rather than destroying. A pulse of energy washed over the craft vessel, shutting down every system without harming the crew. The massive warship went dark and began to drift. The enemy fleet erupted into chaos. They had never encountered anything that could move like the Celestial Dawn. Their weapons were designed to fight slow-moving capital ships, not something that could dance between them like a hummingbird. Commanders shouted orders, but their crews could barely track their target. Spark and Ember launched from their perches and flew out through an open launch bay. The dragons were protected by their own natural abilities plus enhancements from the ship. They zipped through space-breathing streams of fire that somehow burned in the vacuum. The flames did not harm the craft ships but created sensor interference that added to the confusion. Lisa felt pure joy as she piloted the Celestial Dawn through its element. This was what the ship had been built for and what she had been chosen for. Her human instincts for improvisation and adaptation combined perfectly with the ship's advanced systems. Every move she made was unpredictable because she was creating them in the moment based on feeling rather than calculation. Melody provided the perfect counterbalance. Her elf mind processed information faster than any human could. She saw patterns and possibilities that Lisa's instincts missed. Together, they were far more effective than either could have been alone. The ship had known this. The architects had designed it to require both human and elf working in harmony. The second pass through the enemy fleet targeted 3 more command ships. Lisa brought them close enough that Melody could hit all 3 with a single wide-spectrum pulse. The craft vessels went dark one after another. Their supporting ships scattered in confusion without orders to guide them. The third pass was the most daring. Lisa took them straight through the center of the fleet toward the flagship. It was twice the size of the other ships and heavily armored. Its commander had been watching the battle and was ready for them. Every weapon on the flagship opened fire simultaneously. The Celestial Dawn's shields blazed as they absorbed the incoming energy. Lisa could feel the strain, but the ship held firm. Melody redirected power from non-essential systems to strengthen the shields. They pushed through the barrage like a spear through paper. When they reached the flagship, Lisa did something unexpected. Instead of attacking, she opened a communication channel. Her voice broadcast across every craft ship in the fleet. She told them they were outmatched. They could retreat with honor, or they could stay and watch more of their ships get disabled. The craft flagship commander appeared on the display. He was a massive creature with scaled skin and eyes like molten metal. His species respected strength above all else, and he recognized that he had encountered something beyond his ability to defeat. After a long moment, he gave the order to withdraw. The enemy fleet began to turn away from Ethermore. The disabled command ships were recovered by their escorts. Within an hour, the entire Krath armada was jumping to hyperspace and fleeing the system. They had come to conquer and left in disgrace. Lisa brought the Celestial Dawn back to the royal palace. The hangar was filled with cheering elves who had watched the battle on displays. The king himself waited at the landing pad with tears of relief in his ancient eyes. His kingdom was saved. The celebration in the royal palace lasted 3 days. Elves from every corner of Ethermore came to honor Lisa and Princess Melody. Songs were written about the battle and the ancient ship that had awakened after centuries of silence. Children played games pretending to be the human pilot, and her elf navigator flying through imaginary enemy fleets. But Lisa felt restless during the festivities. Through her connection with the Celestial Dawn, she could sense that their mission was far from over. The ship showed her visions of other worlds in danger. Other civilizations that needed help? The architects had not built this vessel to defend just one planet. It was meant to protect the entire galaxy. Princess Melody sensed Lisa's distraction during a banquet held in their honor. The two had become close friends over the past week as they trained with the ship and learned to work together seamlessly. Melody could read Lisa's expressions now, and she saw the longing for something more than celebration. That night they met in the hangar where the Celestial Dawn rested. Spark and Ember were already there playing among the ship's landing struts. The dragons had grown noticeably larger since bonding more deeply with the vessel. They now stood as tall as wolves with wingspans that could cover a small house. Lisa climbed aboard and sat in the pilot chair even though she was not wearing the armor. She could still feel the ship's presence in her mind. It showed her images of a distant world where people were being oppressed by a corrupt government. Another place where a disease was spreading and no cure existed. A third location where two species were on the brink of war over a misunderstanding. Melody joined her in the command center and immediately understood what Lisa was seeing. The ship was calling them to action. The Celestial Dawn was not just a weapon but a tool for bringing hope to the hopeless. The architects had sent it forward through time knowing that darkness would always exist somewhere in the galaxy. They went to the king the next morning with their proposal. They wanted to leave Ethermore and travel the galaxy helping those who needed it most. The kingdom was safe now and had its own fleet to maintain defenses. But countless other worlds had no such protection. Lisa and Melody could make a difference. The king listened quietly to their request. His ancient face showed no emotion, but his eyes held deep thought. He had known this moment would come. When the ship awakened, he understood that it would not stay grounded for long. The Celestial Dawn was meant to fly free and fulfill the purpose the architects had given it. After a long silence, the king granted his permission. Princess Melody was released from her royal duties to become a full-time navigator and diplomat. Lisa was given official status as a representative of Ethermore, with authority to speak for the kingdom when needed. Together they would carry the values of their world to the stars. The farewell ceremony was bittersweet. Melody's family understood why she needed to go, but that did not make it easier. Her mother, the queen, held her for a long time before letting go. Her brother Prince Nathan promised to keep the kingdom safe in her absence. Even the normally stoic king showed emotion as he blessed their journey. Lisa had no family on Ethermore except the friends she had made during her 5 years there. But those friendships were deep and true. The engineers who had helped her understand the ship gathered to wish her well. The soldiers she had trained with presented her with gifts for the journey. Everyone knew they might not see her again for years or perhaps ever. The Celestial Dawn lifted off at dawn with hundreds of elves gathered to watch. Spark and Ember flew alongside as escorts, their scales catching the first light of morning. The ship climbed through the atmosphere and into the darkness of space where stars waited like distant campfires. Their first destination was the world Lisa had seen in her vision. It was called Viridian and it orbited a green sun. The people there were humanoid but with skin that changed color based on their emotions. They had been conquered by a warlord who ruled through fear and violence. The journey took 2 weeks even with the Celestial Dawn's faster-than-light engines. During that time, Lisa and Melody grew even closer. They shared stories of their lives. Lisa talked about Earth and the family she had left behind when her pod malfunctioned. Melody spoke of growing up in the palace and the weight of royal expectations. They discovered they had more in common than expected. Both felt like outsiders in their own ways. Lisa was human in a world of elves. Melody was a princess who wanted to be a warrior. The ship had brought them together because they understood what it meant to be different. When they arrived at Viridian, they found a world in pain. The warlord's forces occupied every major city. Resistance fighters hid in the mountains trying to organize but lacking the resources to fight back. The people's color-changing skin had faded to dull grays and browns from constant fear and oppression. Lisa and Melody studied the situation carefully. They could not just attack the warlord's forces directly. That would make them conquerors themselves. Instead, they needed to empower the people of Viridian to take back their own world. The Celestial Dawn had weapons that could help, but wisdom was more important than firepower. They made contact with the resistance leaders and offered assistance. At first, the Viridians were suspicious. They had been betrayed before by those who promised help. But Melody's diplomatic skills and Lisa's genuine desire to serve rather than control won them over. The plan they developed was brilliant in its simplicity. The Celestial Dawn would disable the warlord's communications and weapon systems, Spark and Ember would create distractions, drawing forces away from key locations. The resistance would then strike simultaneously across the planet, liberating cities while the enemy was blind and confused. It worked perfectly. The warlord's regime collapsed within hours once the people realized they outnumbered their oppressors. The tyrant himself fled in a stolen ship and was never seen again. The Viridians held elections and formed a new government based on freedom and equality. Lisa and Melody stayed for a month helping with reconstruction. The Celestial Dawn systems included fabricators that could produce building materials and medical supplies. Spark and Ember became beloved figures, especially among children who had never seen dragons before. When it was time to leave, the Viridians threw a celebration similar to the one on Ethermore. Their skin blazed with colors of joy and gratitude. They declared Lisa and Melody to be heroes and friends of their world forever. Over the next 2 years, Lisa and Melody became legends across dozens of star systems. Wherever they went, the Celestial Dawn brought hope and change. They stopped wars before they started by facilitating communication between species who had forgotten how to talk. They delivered medicine to plague worlds and helped scientists develop cures. They rescued colonies from natural disasters and rebuilt what had been destroyed. Word of their deeds spread through the galaxy faster than they could travel. Species that had never met before shared stories about the human and the elf who flew an ancient ship, about the 2 dragons who guarded them and seemed to understand the hearts of those they met. The Celestial Dawn became a symbol of something the galaxy had forgotten was possible. Hope without conquest, help without dominance. Power used to protect rather than control. But not everyone celebrated their work. There were those who saw Lisa and Melody as threats to the established order. Warlords who profited from chaos. Corporations that exploited desperate worlds. Even some governments that ruled through oppression and feared the example the 2 heroes set. A coalition of these dark forces formed in secret. They called themselves the Shadow Accord, and they had one goal: destroy the Celestial Dawn and kill its crew. If they succeeded, the galaxy would return to the way it had been. Might would rule over right and hope would die. The Shadow Accord set their trap carefully. They sent a distress signal from a remote system, claiming that an innocent transport ship was under attack by pirates. It was exactly the kind of situation Lisa and Melody always responded to. The bait was perfect. The Celestial Dawn jumped to the location and immediately knew something was wrong. Lisa's instincts screamed danger even before the sensors detected the ambush. 20 warships decloaked, surrounding them in a sphere of firepower. These were not ordinary vessels, but cutting-edge military craft equipped with weapons designed specifically to counter the ancient ship's technology. Melody's tactical displays lit up with warnings. They were massively outnumbered and trapped. The enemy had studied recordings of their previous battles and developed countermeasures. The Shadow Accord had brought enough force to destroy a small fleet, and all of it was focused on them. Lisa felt fear for the first time since awakening the ship. Not for herself, but for Melody and the dragons. She had brought them into this, and now they might all die because of her determination to help others. But even as that fear rose, another emotion pushed it aside. Defiance. This was exactly the situation the architects had prepared for. The moment when hope seemed lost and surrender appeared to be the only option. The time when a human's stubborn refusal to give up would make all the difference. Lisa smiled grimly, and her hands moved across the controls with absolute confidence. The Celestial Dawn responded to her determination. Systems activated that had remained dormant until this moment. The ship had been holding back, showing only a fraction of its true capabilities. Now it revealed what the architects had really built. Not just a warship, but a vessel that could reshape reality itself. Space around them began to fold and twist. The enemy weapons fire curved away as if repelled by invisible shields. The Celestial Dawn split into multiple identical copies, each one solid and real. The Shadow Accord ship suddenly faced not one target but 50, all moving independently. Melody worked frantically to coordinate the copies. Through the neural link, she could control each version of the ship simultaneously. It was like playing 50 instruments at once, but the ship gave her the mental capacity to manage it. Each copy targeted a different enemy vessel and fired at the same instant. The Shadow Accord fleet erupted into chaos. Their carefully planned ambush became a nightmare as they faced an enemy that broke every rule of physics they understood. Ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Weapons that should have connected passed through empty space. The Celestial Dawn was everywhere and nowhere. Spark and Ember grew to enormous size empowered by the ship's reality warping abilities. The dragons became as large as the warships themselves. Spark breathed frost that froze enemy weapons in place. Ember unleashed fire that burned through shields without damaging the crews inside. They were majestic and terrifying in equal measure. Lisa felt the strain of maintaining the reality distortion. It was taking everything she had plus everything the ship could provide. But she refused to stop. Melody supported her, feeding strength through their connection. The two of them together were stronger than either could be alone. The partnership the architects had designed was proving its worth. The battle reached its climax when Lisa did something impossible. She brought all 50 copies of the Celestial Dawn together into a single point. The resulting energy release created a shockwave that disabled every enemy ship simultaneously. None were destroyed, but all were left drifting and powerless. As the enemy fleet floated helpless, Lisa opened communication channels to all of them. Her voice was firm but not cruel as she explained that they had a choice. They could continue trying to spread darkness, or they could join the growing movement toward something better. The galaxy was changing whether they liked it or not. They could change with it or be left behind. Some of the Shadow Accord ships chose to flee once their systems rebooted. Others stayed and listened. A few even asked to join the cause they had tried to destroy. Lisa accepted them, knowing that everyone deserved a chance at redemption. The battle became famous as the moment the old ways truly began to end. The Shadow Accord fell apart as its members realized they could not win against something that represented the best parts of every species working together. Other groups that had planned similar attacks abandoned their schemes. Lisa and Melody continued their journey across the stars. They were no longer just two individuals, but symbols of what the galaxy could become. The Celestial Dawn carried them from world to world, spreading not conquest, but the simple idea that everyone deserved freedom, dignity, and hope. Years passed and they never stopped. There was always another world in need, always another wrong to right. Spark and Ember grew to full maturity, becoming wise counselors in addition to fierce protectors. The ship itself seemed to grow stronger, as if their dedication fed it power. Eventually they returned to Ethermore for a visit. The kingdom had prospered in their absence. The king was proud of what Melody and Lisa had accomplished. They stayed only a week before the call of space pulled them back. There was still so much work to do. As the Celestial Dawn lifted off once more, Lisa reflected on how far she had come from the lost explorer who crashed in the forest. She had found purpose and family among the stars. Melody sat beside her, and Spark and Ember perched behind them. Together they flew toward the next adventure, toward the next world that needed them. The ship that had refused to fly until a human sat in the armor now carried the hopes of billions. And it would continue flying as long as there were people who needed help and heroes willing to provide it.